Hey dads, welcome to Father Friend, a podcast for dads who want to lean in, lead well, and love big. I'm Dr. Mike Ayers. Our very first episode is talking to your teen son about sex. So now, since this is our first episode, let me give you a quick snapshot of who I am. I'm the author of a couple of books, an educator who's worked in higher education administration and taught business, leadership, and management courses for over 20 years. While doing that, I also planted a church and pastored it for 25 years. I've led dozens of parenting workshops, talked to a multitude of dads, and most importantly, I'm the father of 3 young adult children. As a parent, just like you, I've walked with my kids through sleepless nights, diapers, t-ball, Boy Scouts, dance, friendships, sleepovers, sickness, ER visits, acne, braces, cheerleading, church attendance, basketball, the know-it-all teen years, dating, breakups, choosing a college, and marriage. What an amazing, chaotic, and immensely rewarding adventure. So I've been there. I don't know it all, but through trying, failing, and learning, I've picked up a few things. This podcast is based on experience, not experiments. I've made plenty of mistakes, and I'll be the first to tell you, this is what I did. Don't do that. And thankfully, I did a few things right too. Some I planned, some I stumbled upon, and some I borrowed from other great dads. The result? By God's grace, I'm blessed to have 3 amazing kids, 2 sons and a daughter, with whom I'm not just dad, but a father friend. They're walking out life in healthy, grounded, and fulfilling ways. Now to the topic at hand, talking to your teen son about sex. As a father, few conversations feel weightier or more uncomfortable than the one about sex, and yet few are more important. In a world that treats sex like a commodity, this conversation is your opportunity to speak directly into your son's identity, values, and future. It's also a chance to give him 3 of the greatest gifts a father can offer. First, a clear vision of the purity and sanctity of sex. Second, a meaningful deposit into his future marriage and the wife he hasn't yet met, helping him begin that relationship with trust, without baggage, and without hindrance. And then third, protection from the emotional and physical harm that so often comes with casual sex. This is one part in a series called Courageous Conversations, the hard but holy talks dads need to have with their kids. These episodes will be sprinkled throughout the show over time. Eventually, I hope to compile them into a full collection, maybe even a book. So let me start off by offering 3 disclaimers. First, this topic is huge. There's no way to cover it all in one episode. My hope is to give you enough insight and confidence to take a step forward. If I miss something, or if you have questions, thoughts, or stories, I'd love to hear from you. Email me at mikea@fatherfriend.net, or just reach out to say hello. Second disclaimer, this podcast is filling a gap that I see in the noise. Much of what I hear today comes from woke, nurtured heart parenting circles that tend to enable kids rather than lead them. Dads are expected to coddle their children, and it's harming them. That's not what we're doing here. This show is about leadership and influence. Everything we do at Father Friend is grounded in faith, family, morality, and real masculinity. I approach sex from a biblical worldview, but I'm not here to just quote scripture, be a prude, or throw out platitudes. I'm a man, and I've had my share of struggles in this area. What I share is backed by scripture, research, and common sense. So yes, we're pushing back against 2 extremes. On one side, the progressive parenting culture that tells us to affirm everything and lead nothing. And on the other, the overzealous evangelical crowd that lacks grace and can't explain what they believe beyond a rule book. Many of you may disagree with me, especially on a topic like today. You might say that my vision for your sons is unrealistic, outdated, or even prudish. That's okay. I'm not here to win a culture war. I'm here to call fathers to something higher. Because when the world gets louder, our sons don't need dads who stay silent. They need dads who lead. And I'm more than okay with taking a different path because I have to ask, well, how is the world's way working? Look around. It's not. Aim higher. Seek better for your kids. Third disclaimer. This conversation is not the same one you'd have with your 4 to 6-year-old. That earlier talk is about body parts, privacy, and boundaries. And yes, we'll cover that in another podcast and blog post. But this one is different. This is for dads with preteen or teenage young men standing at the edge of independence, which they want and need. facing a culture that's ready to shape them, and navigating the natural curiosity that comes with puberty. They need a conversation with a father who exhorts them, provides a vision for purity, and is grounded in grace. So, at what age do you have the talk? Well, that depends. It depends primarily on when they need it. The goal is to protect their innocence without leaving them uninformed. Because if you don't speak first, the culture will. So keep your hand on the pulse of where your son is. The goal? No information from the world without interpretation from you. Now here's a shocker. According to the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, the average age a boy is exposed to porn is as young as 11 years old. That means these children are learning about sex from a screen. That's tragic, but it's happening. So what's often referred to as quote unquote the talk may need to be 2 to 3 talks. You could have an early talk like at age 11 that includes some basics of male-female attraction and then more details about intercourse and masturbation at, let's say, age 13. And then another conversation at 15 or 16 about saving oneself for marriage. You're going to have to figure this out on your own, but develop a strategy. And I would encourage you not to have this particular full talk that we're discussing today before age 11, unless you know that your son has been exposed to pornography or comes to you with questions. The strike zone here is between 12 to 14 years old, with the sweet spot being age 13. To some, that will seem early. To others, that will seem late. That's your call. But just know that your kids are being exposed to a lot more than you think and at earlier ages. I had this talk with my oldest son at age 12 and my other son at age 13. I also want to encourage you, whether you're having one conversation, 2 or 3 on this topic, and the one we're referring to today is a must-have, make sure each conversation stands on its own. This should not be quick chats over dinner or tossed into everyday conversation. Set aside intentional time with your son. Take him out to eat, go for a walk, plan a camp out or a retreat, something that feels special. Why? Because sex is a sacred gift, and it deserves more than a casual mention. It calls for your full attention and a conversation that reflects its value. All right, here's what we're covering in this episode. Why dads avoid this talk and why you shouldn't. Presenting a vision of sexual purity. Yes, it's possible. The substance of the sex talk. The what and how. Speaking with authority and credibility. When he stumbles. And the final section, emotional memory, the power of your presence. Let's dive in. Why dads avoid this talk and why you shouldn't. This talk intimidates most of us. And that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, did your dad talk to you about this when you were a kid? Mine didn't. But that's why you're a super dad, because you're going to do the hard stuff and not wimp out like many dads do. I found that there are 3 reasons why we avoid this conversation. 1, because some of us carry shame from our own past and wonder if we're even qualified to speak into our son's future. Many, if not most men listening to this podcast have made mistakes in this area and have crossed lines they might regret. Does that mean we shouldn't step up? No. Your past doesn't disqualify your voice. However, you can't speak with authority and authentically if you're still dealing with unresolved shame. That doesn't mean you need to share details with your son, but it does mean you need to be honest. Authenticity doesn't mean sharing every dark detail. It means not misrepresenting yourself. It means not being a counterfeit. So this is not a sermon you're giving your son. This is a heart-to-heart. He needs to feel your realness, your vulnerability, your leadership, and your deep-seated desire for his very best. He needs a dad who can say, hey, I've not been perfect in my past and I've messed up, but I've learned what matters and I want something better for you. When you're credible, your son will listen. The second reason we avoid the conversation. Some dads hold back because of the boys will be boys mentality, the idea that hormones are just too strong and purity is too idealistic. But that mindset sells your son short. He isn't a prisoner of his urges. He's capable of self-control, of conviction, and of pursuing something better. Your job isn't to excuse behavior. It's to cast a vision. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. You know, it's really tragic that parents set the bar so low for their kids. Back when I was in student ministry, I knew a family whose dad told his son, I know you're going to do it, so here's a condom, just do it here in the house. You know what struck me most? The son was the one who confided in me about that. He was a Christian, and he was disappointed. He told me, I just didn't think my dad would say something like that. So speak to your son's higher identity. Call out the man in him. That doesn't mean that he needs a lecture. He needs to know that you believe he's capable of restraint, respect, and purpose. That's why we lead. That's why we speak up. That's why this talk matters. And the third reason we avoid this conversation is because we literally do not know what to say. So let's begin to address that. Our goal first is to present a vision of sexual purity for our sons. Now, we've got to offer more than just don't do it or use fear as a tactic. We've got to give our sons a compelling, positive vision for purity, one that isn't rooted in shame, but in strength, self-respect, and sacredness. One of the most important truths you can share with your son is that sex is good. It's not dirty. It's not shameful. It's not something to be feared or avoided. It's something to be honored. Sex is a gift from God, designed for the covenant of marriage. It's the physical expression of a deeper reality, trust, unity, and lifelong commitment. It's more than just a physical act, as our culture teaches. It's a merging of souls. It's a spiritual and emotional bond meant to deepen intimacy between a husband and wife. I know these are traditional messages, but he needs to hear them, and it's powerful to hear them from his father. He won't get this stuff anyplace else. But believe me, these messages will serve him well in life, and your communication to him is an act of love. Do you want what's best for your son? Well, this is what's best. So reiterate why God wants such strong boundaries around sex. Not because he wants to rob us of pleasure, not because he wants to keep us from all kinds of fun, but because he wants to protect the power of this beautiful act. Boundaries don't mean repression. They are loving guidelines meant for our best. So tell your son, waiting is not punishment. Waiting to have sex until marriage is one of the most radical countercultural things your son can do. Challenge him with this because it's one of the most meaningful gifts he can give to his future wife. To say, I saved this for you, that's powerful. It's a courageous, love-fueled act of honoring someone he hasn't even met yet. Tell him you're showing strength by choosing what's uncommon, what's selfless, and what's sacred. One day when you stand before your future wife, you'll be able to show her just how much she mattered because you waited for her and only her. So as my sons approached 15 and 16, I had another conversation with each of them on this subject. A set-aside time at a father-son adventure camp where I asked if they wanted to make a commitment to save the gift of physical intimacy for their wives. They both wanted to make that commitment. Was the conversation awkward? In some ways, yes, but I could tell that they appreciated it. A little messy, but it built a memory for us in our relationship. I gave each of them a ring, a quiet symbol that they could keep close, which they did. Sometimes they wore it around their neck, and sometimes they hung it by their bed. It marked a moment, created a memory for us together, and it mattered. Okay, that's a vision for purity. Next in the conversation, you need to talk about the act itself. This is the part that scares dads the most. What do I actually say? As uncomfortable as it may be, part of your responsibility as a dad is to help your son understand the mechanics of sex. The talk isn't complete without clarity. Ambiguity around this only creates confusion. Do it. He may feel embarrassed, grossed out, or even shocked. If so, help him feel comfortable. Your own comfort level, peace, and security will help him remain stable. Don't try to be funny. Don't make light of this or try to be cool. Be a dad. Be a leader. Walk through it. Now, you shouldn't assume he knows what intercourse is. After telling him what you want to talk about, lead the conversation by first asking questions. Son, do you know what intercourse is? And as a follow-up, I know this is tough to talk about, but it's important. Do you know how sex actually works? Give him the chance to answer yes or no. And even if he does say he knows or tries to blow you off, don't skip the details. Explain it to him in a clear, calm, clean way so that he hears it from you. This doesn't have to be graphic or weird. It just needs to be honest. Explain what happens physically between a man and a woman in the context of sex. Use appropriate words. Keep it simple. Tell him this act is designed not just for physical pleasure or to have babies, but to bond two people together for life. And tell him again why God designed it to take place only in marriage, because that's where love is committed, secure, and sacred. Seek to describe it in ways that denotes its beauty and sacredness, not a casual thing to be taken for granted. Okay, now, yes, we're going there. What about masturbation? It's awkward, but we need to go there in the talk because your son has questions, even if he never voices them. He either has experimented with this or he is soon going to. It's really important to discuss. Let me give you 5 points about this topic of conversation, along with kind of a sample statement of truth and grace to include under each point. Point number 1, normalize the urges without dismissing them. Let your son know that what he's experiencing is normal. Puberty brings powerful urges, and these desires don't make him broken, dirty, or perverted. They are a natural part of growing up, but they're not meant to be blindly followed. Here's the truth to include. Your body is changing. These urges are normal. Here's the grace to include. You're not the only one. Every guy your age wrestles with this. Here's point number 2. Emphasize the goal. Self-control, not perfection. Make it clear that the standard is not about being flawless. It's about learning discipline, restraint, and emotional maturity. Encourage him to resist because unchecked habits can lead to harmful patterns. Here's the truth to include. Masturbation may feel private and harmless, but it can become addictive or tied to emotional escapes like boredom, loneliness, or stress. Here's the grace to include. This is a struggle for most guys. If you mess up, you're not alone and you're not disqualified. Point number 3, avoid shame. Stay calm and grounded. Your tone matters as much as your message. Speak calmly and confidently. Avoid shock, guilt, or overcorrection. What your son needs most is your steadiness. Here's the truth to include. There are consequences if this goes unchecked. Here's the grace to include. There is always a way forward. This doesn't define you. Point number 4, speak of God's role in this struggle. Frame the conversation in light of spiritual growth. Remind your son that God is there to help him and forgive him. This is about maturity and becoming the man God created him to be. Here's the truth to include. God calls us to purity and self-control for a reason. Here's the grace to include. God is patient, forgiving, and willing to help you grow in strength and wisdom. And point number 5, leave the door open for ongoing conversations. Don't treat this like a one-and-done moment. Let him know you're available to talk again about this or anything. The long-term impact comes from emotional safety and consistent presence. Here's the truth to include. This isn't easy to talk about, but it matters, and you're important to me. Here's the grace to include. I'm always here. No shame. Just talk to me. All right, moving on. Don't be afraid to set the bar high. So this talk is based in really a philosophical approach, one that says control, boundaries, and restraint is best. There's a world out there that says, nope, let go, be uninhibited. I realize that my approach in the context of today's world sounds outdated, Puritan, and out of touch. Well, I believe the Bible gets it right. It's not repressive. It's not meant to constrain. It's actually about providing freedom and fulfillment. Understood properly, God's wisdom works. But I also want to say that research bears these truths out. There are many biblical reasons we should encourage young men to wait until marriage for sex. But research also shows that those who wait often experience greater emotional and psychological well-being. Perhaps one of the most urgent reasons to inspire our sons to wait until marriage is this. When we're permissive, we risk pushing our sons into a hypersexualized culture that treats sex like an impulse instead of a covenant. This can lead to addictive patterns and long-term damage, especially when sex is detached from love, commitment, and purpose. Beyond that, as you well know, there are important health concerns, like the risk of STDs and teen pregnancy. We expect our kids to aim high in many things: education, grades, sports, eventually career. Don't we tell them, hey, no matter what you're pursuing, stand out, don't follow the crowd, and do your very best? So why do we set the expectation low when it comes to sex? Yes, it's true. Statistics show that around 75% of teens have sex by the time they reach adulthood. According to a study published in the Public Health Reports, over 3/4 of American teens engage in premarital sex by the age of 20. But that also means 25% don't. 1 in 4 teens are choosing to wait. So it's not unrealistic. It's just uncommon. And that's exactly what makes it meaningful. We don't lower the bar, we call them upward. Why would we do anything less when it comes to their character, their integrity, and their future marriage? The truth is, sexual integrity is not beneath them. It's a higher standard worth striving toward, and they are capable. Your son can meet the bar you set, especially if you walk beside him. Don't water down the message out of fear. Elevate the standard with grace and vision. And of course, there remains a question to be answered. What about when he stumbles? What about when he fails? Well, a lot of parents hesitate to set this kind of vision before their sons because they worry he might not live up to it. And maybe he won't. What if he falls short? Well, we walk him through it. We don't avoid setting the right standard just because it's hard to reach. That's not how growth works. If and when he fails, then we meet him with grace, not shame. But we still give him a vision worth striving for. Avoiding the standard out of fear of failure only leaves him without direction. So we have the talk, set the vision, give some answers, and then leave the door open for his response to you as he faces the challenges of living under control. Your job isn't to monitor his every move after this. You're not the purity patrol. There has to be a measure of trust in this area. You're there to cast vision, offer truth, and extend grace, and most importantly, to make your presence known throughout these upcoming years. If he stumbles, that's when grace matters most. Pick him up. Remind him who he is. Be the catalyst for God's forgiveness and renewal. Failure is not final and doesn't mean an end-all to sexual purity. But what if he resists? Let's say he shrugs it off, mocks the values you're trying to instill, or acts like he doesn't care. Well, that's different, but not a deal breaker. You need to stand firm. Be steady. Walk through the conversation anyway. Require him to hear you out. Providing boundaries to help him in exposure to information, in his friendships, and in dating. Don't just give up on this. Love doesn't mean permissiveness. It means leading with both heart and backbone. Then outlast him. You're the grown-up. Don't compromise. Chances are he'll come to respect you not just for what you said, but for how you said it. No matter how the conversation goes, it matters that you had it, because your love for him is bigger than his discomfort, and his future is worth fighting for. Finally, let's discuss the concept of emotional memory, one that we will refer to often in the course of this show. So in the end, after the talk, what will he actually remember? Well, your son won't remember everything you said, but he will remember how you made him feel. That's emotional memory. That's what lingers. That's what shapes his heart and what will outlast his crazy teenage years. This he will take into adulthood. That's why we say presence is greater than perfection. You don't need to say it perfectly. What he'll remember is that you showed up. Be willing, be kind. Courageous conversations aren't about getting it right. They're about getting connected. And always at the end, say the words he needs to hear. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm here for you always. This is a hard talk, but it's a holy one. So lean in, speak truth, lead with grace, trust that God will use your voice, imperfect as it is, to guide your son towards something better. Thanks for being the kind of dad, the courageous kind of dad, who's willing to have the talk. Hey, are you interested in getting a word-for-word script that you can modify and use? If so, shoot me an email and sign up for my newsletter, and I'll send it to you. As a bonus, you'll also receive my list of 9 must-read fatherhood books, all for free. The script I will send you contains all the things that we discussed today and how they fit into a conversation with your teen. Though I wouldn't encourage you to read a script to your son. That might even be more weird. It's great for you to prepare to make sure you say the things that must be said and be authentic with who you are as a dad. So send me an email at mikea@fatherfriend.net. Sign up for our newsletter and I'll be happy to send you the script. A quick note before we wrap up. Today, we've been talking about conversations between a dad and his teenage son. But in a future episode, we'll talk about how to approach the same topic with a teenage daughter, which, as you can imagine, is a very different kind of conversation. However, next week, I'm going to describe for you the whole idea of being a father friend. What is a father friend, and how can that mission drive your actions and attitudes as a dad? It's really important because it gives you a practical goal and outlines beliefs and behaviors at each phase of fatherhood to achieve it. I want to encourage you to follow and subscribe to the Father Friend podcast so you never miss an episode. New conversations drop every Monday, and each one is built to equip you for the road ahead. Please share this podcast with other dads that you know. Let's build this community. It's a unique message, and dads need to hear it. Thanks for joining me on this very first episode. I'm so excited about the road ahead. For more tools, resources, and real talk on fatherhood, visit fatherfriend.net or follow on social media at Thinking Dads. Hey, remember, you don't have to be perfect as a dad. You just have to show up with purpose. See you next time.